Hello. I'll just settle in a second. Lovely intro, thank you. Back in 1999, I started a business called threecourselunch.com. And the idea was to feed people's minds in their lunchtime. As it turned out, people wanted to eat in their lunchtime, so I decided to write a load of books around communication instead. But what I've done is kind of create a narrative for you today, and I'm here talking about technology and food. So we're going to run through some stories, and I'm just getting used to the clicker. It's quite a strong click. And we're going to run through some ideas, and I'm going to explain to you how this could fit in to yourselves working within this industry. It will speed up to some stats and facts towards the end. So I assume food for thought is overused in the food industry. Would you say? Would you see on lots of headlines and things like that? Yeah. And I've noticed recently there's an exponential growth in the use of phrase exponential growth within the tech industry. And my background is very broad and it includes technology. But as Sarah mentioned, around about 2 years ago, myself and Elisa, my wife is at the back, we got married in virtual reality in Cardiff Bay. And we had a little BBC documentary section about us, and we had around about 50 articles from Time magazine through to Cosmo, and we got sort of a large amount of publicity. And we did it for fun, and it was an absolutely fantastic experience with a digital or virtual reality disco ball and lava lakes and 300 virtual guests as avatars, and it was a wild experience. But why I wanted to bring this up is that sparked people's imaginations about storytelling. And I think for yourselves, you have content. Everybody eats. And the question is, how do you use stories to humanize technology, or how you can take the opportunity of humanizing technology with your stories? Now, this is one of my favorite, most far-out technologies that is going to happen on the horizon. It's by a lady named Mary Lou Jepson, and it is a thinking cap. It's actually going to externalize our thoughts. We see the first prototypes probably arrive around about 2025. If you know Peter Diamandis, he's invested in the company about $28 million. But I want to use it as a metaphor for you today to put your thinking caps on. And I want you to have a sort of an open mind as how you can use a lot of the things that I'm going to start to run through a little bit quicker. Right, the first thing here, food delivery services. I remember I grew up in South Wales, and it was the early 80s. And how many people are old enough to remember using rotary dial phones? Yeah, come on, not just me. But you remember when you ordered a takeaway? I grew up in Newport, so we used to go to the handpost to get our slow boat takeaway. And you dial and dial and dial, and then eventually you get through, and you drive up there, and then you queue, and then you get your takeaway. Things have changed so much in the last couple of years that, everybody's got a mobile phone, everyone's got apps on it, and the food is just delivered in such a short space of time. And one of the things for you to consider is how micro kitchens, shared kitchen spaces, is something that seems to be emerging on the horizon, where as opposed to it just being restaurants, you have the ability for lots of different companies to work together more, and I'm getting nods on that, which is great. So that's the first thing that I discovered when I was exploring. The other thing, drones. There are lots of drones experiments. Google have got them going on, Amazon have got them going on, and Domino's. Whether or not that's going to shorten the timescale between people ordering and delivery, we're going to have to see. But certainly over the next 10 years, people are going to try and work out the models that will work. Now, I'm going to tell you ahead of time, which is always entertaining at a food conference, I'm not a foodie. And in fact, has anybody heard of the French Laundry? French Laundry in California? Yeah, you've heard that? So I went there. I was invited there. It's a 3 Michelin star restaurant. And I was called an embarrassment because I asked for my meat to be better cooked. And I feel that's the last bastion of choice, really, as a human, is I want to cook my meat as I want it. And I think that as we see meal kits delivery starting to come to bear as well, we're not only talking about takeaways, we're talking about people wanting to cook more, but being guided a little bit. So not only do we have the large multiples, but we've also got startups like HelloFresh that are doing incredibly well at delivering meal kits to people's doors. And I know that Waitrose had a Cookwell service delivery. Anybody from Waitrose? Let's be out of turn. And I know it's on hold at the moment, but this entertained me. I looked at social media. People love to post pictures of their food. Short version of this, they didn't realize they had to cook the noodles before they added it to the dish. And then they went on social to say, what an absolute disaster. Of course, we need good instructions and everything has to work. But crunchy noodles leads me into sensory pleasure. Now, this is a bizarre little section. Does everybody remember, you've seen before, Puppy or Bagel? People going online, Puppy or Bagel? This entertains me every time I see it. I mean, the juxtaposition of these two things. Not as much as that. That's Chihuahua or Muffin. I love that. But as I was researching, I thought you might have heard of this. Had anyone heard of autonomous, let me read out exactly, autonomous sensory meridian response, ASMR? Have you heard about this? This is going to be entertaining. So let me explain what it is before I show you a very quick clip. Autonomous sensory meridian response is an experience characterized by a static-like or tingling sensation on the skin that typically begins on the scalp and moves down the back of the neck and the upper spine. Super quick click. This is going on. If you don't know about this, this is a real thing. So a lot of people, I'm getting a nod. You seem to be the one that's clued in on these kind of trends. So people watch not just food, it could be different things that make different sounds, but there are tribes of people that are being built online around these kinds of concepts. Now, partly, as the reason I mentioned about the wedding, from a PR point of view, it gives you an opportunity to jump on the back of a trend that is already happening. Okay. What about Project Nourished? This is a bizarre little idea where you trick the senses. And you trick the senses by having visuals, by having sounds, by having smells that give people an internal response as if there could be food, but there is no food. So I don't know if that's going to be good for the food industry particularly, but it's certainly something that stories can be told around. The idea of that senses is if you are then in a virtual space, then maybe you could even introduce food to your senses, and I don't know, I can't really see the thing working. But mukbangs. Anyone heard of a mukbang? So these have been going since 2010. I'm getting a nod there, and they came out of Korea. What you have, again, YouTube, younger generations than myself, people watch other people feasting. And they will go, and these have got millions and millions of views, and people will go, and it could be Mexican food, it could be Korean food is where it started, it could be Italian, it could be anything, but you often have other people that will also eat at the same time. So you have this strange little social exchange that's going on around something that's just exploded culturally. Gives opportunities for exploring. Okay, little fact for you. Mediacom have said that 49% of all consumers are willing to pay more than when... Sorry, I need my glasses. Bad glasses. Are willing to pay more when in support of the causes that are important to them. So 49% are willing to pay more, and that proportion rose to 60% among consumers aged 18 to 24. You think about plastic packaging and how the tide has turned on that. Again, maybe there's going to be an opportunity. Leads me into augmented reality. So augmented reality can change the way, in particular, that you see packaging. And this is why I wanted to introduce it here. Gartner research says that 100 million consumers will shop using AR, which is a digital overlay, within the next year. So that's 2020, they're predicting that. So when we come to an example, how many of you know Treasury Wine Estates? Heard of Treasury Wine Estates? Yeah. So all of these are pretty new to me, not being a foodie, not being in the industry. But they had one bottle, which was, I think it's called 19 Lives or something like that last year. Let me just double check my facts. And what you would do is point the phone at the bottle, and there would be one of 19 stories that was told by the bottle. So it had a sort of a feeling of it coming to life, a story being told. Now, augmented reality, a lot of people are waiting until we've got a headset. But the reality is everyone's got smartphones. So this gives an opportunity to change how people perceive the labeling that you have, and potentially to make it a lot more personal. If we look at the idea of augmented reality in supermarket aisles, and it could be in festivals, could be wherever, I think the most forward-thinking people are going to be when they can personalize this, when the apps themselves are based upon the data of that person, the historic purchase behaviors, and offers being tailored to them specifically as opposed to it being generic. But you can see just in this example, for instance, if you want lighter calories, then you could filter that information on digital overlays, and you're giving people a unique experience within a supermarket environment. Which leads us into personalisation. Now, how many familiar with this kind of machine? Have you seen these around? 3D printers. I look at 3D printing, and I realise that there's going to be a huge application for people, particularly in an industrial situation. At home, we may well have one. Whether they have one with food, I'm not sure, because I found this online. This is a picture of 3D printed food. Delicious, I think. I think that is absolutely... That is what that's my emotional response to it, is that, yes, please, I want that, because these people that I found on that website look so happy. Now, that's you and me, Lisa, that's fair. Now, I say it's slightly joking, but the reality is that in time, there is going to be personalisation around food. There is the opportunity to, for instance, have different vitamins, different minerals, whatever else that you want to go into a particular 3D printed meal. So even though I joke about it, because I can't find any great examples where I think it's been done well, there is a fact here, which you're going to either agree with or disagree with. Let's have a look. I've got my fact sheet. Yeah, Gartner. By 2021, 20% of the world's top 100 consumer goods consumer good companies will use 3D printing to create custom products. I don't know. Gartner seems to be quite bullish on its predictions. But nonetheless, there is an opportunity for storytelling about 3D printing and food. Okay. Vito Mojo. I found this about more on personalisation on the rise. Has anyone come across Vito Mojo in London? Again, in my research, they seem to have, London tends to have these things that spring forth quite quickly. But the thing that caught my eye was an ecosystem for personalisation and looking at personalisation based upon DNA. I went, that really is quite a different way of approaching it. Now, we may find that we have lab-grown meats, always tasty when they're in a Petri dish, that are cooked with the assistance of virtual chefs, which are prototyped via Electrolux a little while ago. But the reality is, all of these things are probably a little bit far away and, at the moment, a bit novelty. What we do have is predictive analysis, and we have robots. So let's just have a little look at a couple of slides on here. Gastrograph AI. Has anybody come across this? So this is an interesting find, and it talked about, see here, helping producers make and sell great products from conception to consumption. What caught my attention very much was the artificial intelligence aspect of it. Now, I don't know much more apart from scanning the website. But the idea of predictive analysis, are you all familiar with the concept of predictive analysis? Quite a lot of people. So from my research, predictive analysis and machine learning seem to be the same thing, and artificial intelligence is a kind of catch-all that has many other factors underneath it. So it's kind of the top shelf, and then these are fitted within it. But what it means is that the technology is starting to look at being able to help producers predict consumer behavior. And if you've got platforms that are more democratized, accessible to smaller producers, then there's an opportunity there. So I thought I'd focus on predictive analysis as opposed to the nanobots that people are predicting they're going to be in our bloodstream, which I'm not sure about yet, and the robots that we'll see in restaurants. And this robot is a delivering staff robot that is in a Dutch-themed amusement park in Japan. that is a bizarre. Whoever came up with that in the marketing department? But nonetheless, people are playing with these ideas. They're getting press. They're getting attention. This is more likely to affect how people purchase, which is the robots in the warehouse and the autonomous vehicles that we'll start to see coming through over the next 5-10 years. One trend that I didn't know about was micro-fulfillment within urban areas. Are people familiar with this? Have you heard about this? Looking for nods. So this is one company I came across, which I'll give you the name, Common Sense Robotics. I think they're out of Israel. But they are building online demand supply chains that enable sustainable one-hour delivery to online customers. They happen to have funding that got announced last month in the press. So the idea being that the robots can quicken the process of people from the order point to the delivery point, because everyone's kind of like a food idea for accessibility. Okay, blockchain. Blockchain, the biggest effect of blockchain. How many people are familiar with blockchain? So those of you that are familiar probably are aware of it within the guise of source to table. And really, there's a huge amount going on with that. IBM are running platforms with that. And I think that really is much more important than the other aspects of the cryptocurrency side, which blockchain is generally known for. So it allows tracking and tracing. The reason that it got my attention in this particular context is because I had this idea of, if you could, would you want to know the difference between, and I'll read it, Aled the Aberdeen Angus from Anglesey, yeah, I read that, and Harriet the Black Hereford from Hampshire. Do you want to know on your packaging, specifics about that? Now, that might be a little extreme to give the animal a name, but it does give you the tracking and tracing ability at that granular level. Okay, last few minutes. Internet of Things. Seeing as we're talking about connecting things, what you have here is, we know this is happening. Millions of sensors feeding back on temperature, humidity, and freshness, and that can increase transparency, it can reduce food waste, and reduce your overall cost of tracking things. And I think that's more important to think about than waiting for people to have IoT-connected fridges at home. Yeah, we don't replace our fridges that often. And in a way, the opportunity as producers, I think, is to look at, could you build a tribe of people who are interested in being informed, hey, why not by email, as to when food is getting short on the display time, and in order to reduce your waste, you encourage people to come and purchase it. How do you use the sensors in order to ultimately benefit the end consumer? So I think it's going to be a while until that. Devices. What about AI and voice technology? Again, I think it's always the same 100 million people. 100 million people have a Amazon voice unit, an Alexa unit, installed so far. So just as we're seeing it from the 90s, we all went online, or end of the 90s, early 2000s, we're seeing again these home units that are getting installed and becoming part of our lives. We can use them for purchasing. Around about 30% of people at the moment have used an Alexa device to purchase. So maybe in the future, artificially intelligent personal assistants informed by biometric wearable devices will give us dietary tips to encourage good health before it beams back to an insurance company willing to offer lower premiums to healthy eaters. It's really going to come down to you, what happens. But in terms of the opportunities from a PR point of view, I think that people's imagination can be created when you include them. So you might be a case of, you may give up your data, but you do get these lower premiums. So how do you turn that into an opportunity? It's a little bit Big Brother, but you save money. So I think that the press can pick up on these things. Last moments, finally. So imagine, in 20 years' time, you sat at home with your thinking cap on, and you feel like a sandwich. And then your 3D machine automatically receives the printing to print the various ingredients, and then you have your robot that goes over and puts them all into a nice bun before delivering it to you with a bit of mayo on top. Whether or not any of this is going to happen, I don't know, but I wanted to give you some food for thought. Thank you very much.